So tonight I'm just going to talk through, I guess, our process that we went through in looking at procuring an electric vehicle within the waste industry, why we did that, and then I'll move on to some of the challenges and so forth that we've experienced as a result of that, some of the benefits that we're seeing. I'm more than happy to take questions throughout, or you can save them to the end. I'm not too phased. I'm married, so I'm used to being interrupted. Start of just a little bit around East Waste and who we are for those that aren't familiar. We're a regional subsidiary of 7 metropolitan councils. So in essence, what that means is that we're owned by 7 metropolitan councils, and are those listed there on the right-hand side in the little diagram there. So we undertake the curbside collections for those 7 metropolitan councils, which equates to around 1/3 of all collections here in Adelaide. So around 265,000 people that we service, and we do somewhere in the order of 8 million bin lifts a year. So that's across the landfill bin, the recycling bin, and the green organics bin. Top of that, we also do some hard rubbish collections. So there's about 40,000 hard rubbish collections a year that we undertake. And we also work quite extensively in the education and behaviour change space, because we see it's a really important piece of work to actually do that within the education space. There's a lot of work to be done in the broader waste space, getting people to put the right things in the right bins. What you'd think is quite simple, a lot of people struggle with. In total, we've got 45 collection vehicles. They're predominantly RACV, so the robotic arms, the side-loading ones. We've also got a handful of smaller litter trucks and rear-loading trucks. Again, those rear-loading trucks principally for our hard waste. I think why is the fundamental question that always gets asked. Why do we do it, or why do we want to go down the electric road? There's a lot of councils that get really excited about moving to electric vehicles, and I think they get sold on this lovely thought process of having solar panels and wind turbines that are going to power batteries, power their trucks. It looks clean and green. They can run out, do that during the day, and then come back and power them up at night. And absolutely, that's one of the key reasons. That's one of the key things that we want out of electric vehicles. We want that to do that. We all know. You guys probably know it better than I, to be honest, in terms of the values, the environmental benefits, and everything that can come out of that. But electric trucks are very different to electric vehicles in that the technology isn't as advanced in electric trucks as it is in electric vehicles. So all electric trucks at the moment, if you're running a fleet, are actually going to compromise the flexibility of your fleet. For us at East Waste, we obviously, there was a big environmental thing. We've pushed a lot with what we want to do. We see ourselves as a bit of an innovator in terms of what we can do in the waste space. We're really passionate about that. We've pushed with various things with our education program. We've trialled trucks with weights on the lifters and so forth, so that we can assist with our education programs and so forth. So we're constantly looking at what's the next thing. How can we improve this? Absolutely, we want to move away from fossil fuels as our key driver of our fleet. This coming year, we're budgeted to spend close to $1.4 million on diesel to service our fleet. So obviously, if we can get away from that, if we can save some money on that, and that's on the fuel alone, there's a huge saving there for us financially, but also environmentally. Obviously, the carbon emissions and so forth aren't great. We've had a lot of council support about this. We're really fortunate that our 7 member councils are really supportive of what we're doing in this space. Again, they can see the bigger long-term commitment. It helps with their sustainability goals and so forth as well. So we saw that. We also recognise that the EV curve is growing, and it's going to ramp up really quickly. I see it, pretty much on a J-curve approach where we sit, and we think that we want to be a part of that. We wanted to get in early. We wanted to understand what was happening, so that if and when the technology improves, we can be a part of that. We can help drive that, and we can help optimise it for what we want. Rather than buying off the shelf, we can be in and we can help optimise it. And we also think that we're going to have a longer life out of the electric vehicle. I've put a question mark there because really that's not a question we're going to be able to answer until probably 5 or 6 years' time. Currently we swap our vehicles, our diesel vehicles over, what used to be every 7 years, we've just moved to every 8 years that we swap our vehicles over. So all our assessments that we did, we based it on a 7-year swap out phase. So this is the electric vehicle here with one of its first runs, but our standard vehicles, around about 400,000 when we buy them, and 7 years later we sell them, and we're excited if we get 20,000 for them. So there's a huge depreciation and not a great market at the back end. So if we can keep one of these vehicles, the electric vehicles, running, if all we're doing is upgrading batteries or upgrading the body, if we can keep that for 10, 12 years, then obviously there's some massive capital savings there for us as well that we're looking at. The process that we went through, so it started out as a bit of a almost a throwaway line in the office around looking at it and so forth. I come from a sustainability background, so I was actually really interested in exploring the opportunities that could potentially come with this. So doing the initial research was exceptionally challenging. At the time that we started looking, there were none in Australia and there was a couple in New Zealand, and that was it. Getting information out of New Zealand in terms of how they were running them, what they were running, the types of runs that they were doing, again, was really challenging. Trying to match that with where we thought we could use them, how we could potentially use them, how they would fit within our fleet, was really, really challenging. The supplier, Superior Pack, which is one of probably 3 key waste builders, or waste truck builders I should say, in Australia, they were really good. But again, they were almost running as blind as what I was. They didn't have a lot of information. They were open and honest about that, so they certainly weren't looking at selling us a pup sort of thing. They were genuine about that. But at the end of the day, we're a business. Whilst we're owned and run by the councils, we're there to pick up rubbish bins, and if we can't do that, then our life is a pretty short one as an organisation. So whilst there's all these wonderful things that come with having an electric vehicle, we needed something that could actually work, and our premise always was that this vehicle must be a standalone vehicle. So we didn't want something that could only work for half a day and would have to come back and then would run out another diesel vehicle while it got charged. So we wanted a standalone vehicle, one that could make sure it ran all on its own. So we did a fairly detailed business case around that, and that in itself was exceedingly challenging, simply because we had to have so many assumptions that we put in there, and there wasn't a lot of data that we could draw upon. So, how much power it would use on the road, picking up bins, how long does it need to charge, all these things. There's a lot of textbook stuff, but not a lot of real life examples that we could go with. So that provided a real challenge for us to have some confidence in pushing forward with that. We looked at how we could finance the vehicle. So our financing model, we borrow all the money that we need for our capital purchases, and there were a number of concessions available to us through the banks and so forth. So I think it's Commonwealth Bank, provide 50 basis points discounts on their loans for green-based vehicles and so forth. So there's a lot of attraction out there for various industries to look at. The maintenance costs are one of the huge benefits associated with the electric vehicles with respect to garbage trucks. So our big costs are fuel and then brake pads. If you can imagine picking up 12 to 1400 bins a day, that continual stop-start in an electric in a diesel vehicle is quite significant. So we go through brake pads like there's no tomorrow. But that doesn't happen with an electric vehicle, and with a lot more limited moving parts. There's huge savings to be had in the maintenance department, and we're hoping that it's anywhere between 70 to 80% savings on our maintenance costs. It's still too early for us to tell that, but it's certainly pointing that way at this stage. We then had to look at the charging regime that we had and how we wanted to charge it up. My ideal and my first idea was to put in a suite of solar panels. This is on our workshop down at Otterway where we're based. Run it down to a battery pack that charged during the day, and then we'd draw off the battery pack at night. Unfortunately, the economics of that didn't stack up at the time. And so ultimately what we're doing now is we're feeding into the grid during the day, and then we're drawing off the grid at night. We've purchased green energy, so it is effectively 100% green powered. But that also comes with a risk. We don't have completely reliable electricity here in Adelaide. And Otterway, a lot of people haven't even heard of Otterway, and I don't think SA Power Networks have either, because we often get blackouts down there. In our industry, people put their bins out on a certain day and they expect them to be picked up the very next day. So we can't afford to have the power out overnight, a truck not charged, and not picking up bins. We're different to a lawn mowing contractor or whatever, who, if they have a bad day or their truck breaks down, they can simply wait a couple of days and people don't get too upset if their lawns don't get mowed or the reserve doesn't get mowed. We've got to pick up bins on the day that they're put out. So a 99% efficiency rate isn't a good enough rate for us in our industry. Not to say we don't always get it right, but we like to. So the whole charging system was probably something I'd underestimated early on when we went through our business case around what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, how do we come across these issues. But ultimately, as I say, what we settled on is we've got a 36 kilowatt system here. The truck draws on an average day about half of that power in comparison, and then it's fed back into the grid. It's simply a simple three-phase connection. So at our side of our workshop, it's just a simple three-phase connection that goes into the truck, and you'll see that a bit later. The whole of life cost was interesting for us. The vehicle itself, the upfront cost, is about 150,000 more than the standard electric vehicles. So as I said before, the 400,000 roughly for a standard diesel vehicle. Our electric vehicle just north of 550,000. So $150,000 behind from an economic perspective to start with. But our assumptions based on fuel costs, reduced maintenance and so forth, we're optimistic that we'll save around about 70,000 over the life of the vehicle. So it'll come out after 7 years. It'll come out $70,000 in front. We want to retest those assumptions in 12 months' time to see how accurate our business case and so forth was. Early indications is it's probably going to be a little bit less than that because we're not running at the distances that we expected. But again, this is part of all the learning that we're going through as we go through. And obviously board support. So we needed to have board support to do this. Spending $550,000. I'm brave at a lot of things, but this wasn't one of them. So we need to make sure that we shared the responsibility, as I like to say. Sorry, you had a question.
In the business case, you don't have noise reduction in there. You get no credit for noise reduction?
No one will pay us money for that, but if you want to, that'd be awesome.
It's nice to have though, because if you're in a suburban area where there's a lot of stops,
yeah,
you can hear every street as it comes.
it certainly was a consideration, and it's one of the probably value adds. I kind of put it in that box at the moment. So we've got restrictions. We can't do collections before 7 o'clock in the morning in residential streets and 6 o'clock on main roads. But that is because of the noise of the trucks. If we could actually take away the noise, which these largely do, and you'll see a slide later on, then and if we can quieten the noise of the bins actually going into the hopper, then there's nothing stopping us operating 24/7. And when we've got issues with roads like Portrush Road, Glimburn Road and so forth, where it's a high traffic and it causes safety issues for our drivers, as well as issues with parked cars in business precincts and so forth. If we can get the noise pieces sorted, then that allows us to operate outside, or at least apply to the EPA to operate outside those normal hours. And so that's what we're looking at. So there's a whole host of things like the noise that probably sit to the side that we want to pick up and build on as we go through. But we also decided that in the business case, we really had to put a nice boundary around what we're assessing and ultimately assess a like-for-like setup to justify what we were doing. So we've had it since February, and it's been an interesting journey since February, and I've learnt more about kilowatt hours since February than I ever thought I'd needed to, and probably should have paid more attention in high school around some of these things. But everything around the truck is critical to the kilowatt hour, and I'm probably preaching to the converted here when I talk about that. But I don't think people fully appreciate that there is one source of power, and that powers everything. So everything from the the window wipers to the hydraulics, the air conditioner, headlights, all of that is drawing on that one central one central power supply, and it really depends on the driver. So the drivers have got to completely change how they drive. The couple of drivers that we've had that have driven it say it's a completely different experience. They've learnt over time to drive on sound, so they know when the gears are gearing down in the truck. They know when the exhaust brake's doing certain things. They drive to that. All those that sensory inputs that they have in driving is taken away from them with the electric vehicle. So they've got to retrain themselves in terms of how they actually drive. And how you drive it can actually impact quite a lot on how much kilowatt hours you use. Yeah.
Not based on correcting you, but you mentioned exhaust brake. Is that regenerative braking?
Sorry, yeah, yes, yeah. Sorry, the exhaust brake is with the diesel vehicles. Yeah. So, but yes, this does have regenerative braking. So the terrain that it operates on is a big difference as well. In an ideal world, we'd have it operating in the hills where it is hilly, and you get that a lot more regenerative braking happening as a result of that. The speed that it's driven at is critical. It hates high speeds, so anything over 80 k's it doesn't like. There's one, Cleanaway have got one in Melbourne, and they've really struggled with it because they've got a lot of freeway driving, and it just chews through the battery on the freeway. We're really lucky that where ours operates, it doesn't get over 60 k's an hour. So again, it's bespoke. It works really well for us. Depending on the waste stream that it's picking up, so whether it's recycling, organics, or landfill, that also impacts as well. So in a truck will only put about 5 tonnes of recycling in before we need to offload, whereas landfill and organics will push it to 10 tonnes, which is maximum capacity. So again, that extra weight driving back pushes hard and draws it down. And again, weather impacts. So if it's dark and gloomy, got to have lights on, wipers, so forth. That draws down as well. So for us in the waste industry, it's all around how quick you can pick bins up. So if we can pick them up quicker than someone else, then we can save money, and how much you can fit on the truck as well. So the downtime in terms of if you consider here, if we're up at Blackwood, we've got to take our recycling and green organics to Jeffreys at Wingfield. You're looking at a significant turnaround time. And during the peak season, our guys in Mitcham will do 3 loads a day. So there's a lot of downtime going between that. What I didn't mention was that was a big consideration when we very first looked at it. The weight of the batteries was a lot, so we lost close to a tonne of payload, which was too much for us. So, but over the time we were looking at it, that reduced down, and we now only lose around about 400 to 500 kilos of payload, which is acceptable for us, which is why we run with it. Put in there, fully appreciate the range and use. So it's really important that for people and organisations that look at these to really understand them. The one thing that we've learned is you can't do a cookie cutter approach. So if it picks up 800 bins and does 100 k's in Melbourne, that doesn't mean that will do it here because of all those factors that I've just spoken about. And the fact is that it does limit the flexibility of your fleet. So diesel vehicles, we can fuel them up. They'll do 400 or 500 k's a day without a worry. We don't need to worry about it. If we run short, there's lots of service stations that we can go in and fill up, and they can keep going. That doesn't happen with the electric vehicle. So we've got one, in essence, we've got one source, which is back at the depot, and we need to make sure that they can go out, do their runs, get to the tip, and come back and deal with it. So at the moment, waste vehicles, I don't think you're going to see a huge increase in the number of electric waste vehicles, sadly, over the next couple of years, simply because the technology is not there, and the strength of the batteries, there's not enough storage capacity in the batteries to get into to mainstream collections, and I will touch more on that. So there is a compromise if you have electric vehicles in your fleet. What are the lessons that we've learnt in 5 months? It's a juvenile technology. So when I say that, without a doubt, there's enormous technology that goes into electric waste vehicles and electric trucks, and it's huge, but it's not at the same level as your standard car fleet and so forth. So we're coming across issues that we're really surprised at that haven't been discovered before, and we're going back and forth as a result of that. And we're still learning. So we're working with C Electric, who are the transmission guys based out of Melbourne, with that. And as a result, there's been significant downtime, and more downtime than we would have expected. So that's been frustrating, because it means we're in essence carrying a vehicle, which is the one thing I didn't want to do through the process. But it's early days. We accept that that's part of the issues of being an early adopter, is that you are going to have those issues. So it hasn't been helped by C Electric's being based in Melbourne and a thing called COVID, and their technicians and so forth not being able to get across the border and that's added to our frustration. We're still working on how to maximise the performance of the vehicle, and because of the downtime, that hasn't helped. But we're continually looking at how we do it and how do we get the most kilowatt hours out of the vehicle in order to pick the bins up and do the runs that we do. So we were hoping in our business model, our business case, we thought that it would be able to do around about 30% of our collection runs. So we knew it was never going to work here in Mitcham because of the distances. We knew it was never going to work in Adelaide Hills, but we were pretty optimistic around most of the other runs. We thought it would struggle on some of the Burnside Organics runs and so forth because they're heavier. But we've probably learnt that we were a little over ambitious on that, and it's probably only about 10% of the runs that the electric vehicle can do, simply because it doesn't have the range and capacity to do it. So it can drive lots of kilometres and not do many bin pickups, or it can do lots of bin pickups and drive not a lot of kilometres. Neither of them work for an electric vehicle, so it's about bringing that back in and finding that sweet spot.
What is your range on the run on the flat, like picking up bins?
Yeah, so we're only looking at around probably a maximum of 80 to 90 kilometres, and that is working on 900 to 1,000 bins for collection.
And that includes a trip back to Winfield to dump it all?
Yep, yeah. So there's a lot of features on the truck in terms of it shuts down at, or we've set it at 10% power, so the hydraulics cut out at 10%, so it physically won't allow you to pick up bins after 10%, and then all the hydraulics shut down after 5%. So even if it's got a load on, it can't tip if it's less than 5%. So there's a few safety mechanisms in there so you hopefully don't end up on the side of the road. And it's the one thing that I've constantly pushed into the driver's thing, is that the one thing we don't want is to be on the news with our wonderful truck on the side of the road being towed. And touch wood, we haven't yet done that. So again, as I say, we're learning. We know that some drivers have struggled to get 65 k's out of it just because of the way that they drive the vehicle. They're not driving it to maximise performance, and that's that education process with those guys. But yeah, it's around that. If we can get to 90 k's and 1,100 bins, which I think we're probably going to be pushing it. But yeah, that's our. We'd be really happy with that.
Well, how big is the battery pack in it, and how long does it take to charge?
Yep, so it's a 185 kilowatt battery. And it'll take, on the 3-phase power, to fully charge, and we only trickle charge it, it's around about 14 hours, 12 to 14 hours it will take. So it all fits perfectly in with what we want to do. Typically they're only out for 8 to 9 hours, particularly on the runs that we've got it. So it's got all the time that it needs. There is a fast charge, and that third bottom point there, we are working and tweaking it so that it will do a mid-run charge. So we've structured it so that our drivers under the heavy vehicle fatigue laws have got to have a minimum half-hour break every 5 hours. So we're structuring it so they come back to the depot and get that couple of percent in it. So it gets about 5% in that half-hour block, and that's invaluable in terms of, again, how many bins that means in terms of picking up.
Would half an hour add to it?
It's about 4 to 5%. Yeah, so it's not a lot, but it does it. And again, we're looking at the what capabilities there are with different charging techniques. So can we supercharge that, so to speak?
Yeah, like obviously it's not going to fit the parking space of a public fast charger. Not that we have many, but it's not capable with those either.
No, so it's your standard one. So this is just a simple 3-phase power block. But yeah, so it won't fit in there. We could certainly pull up at a council depot. You know, as I say, we only need 3-phase power. But yeah, it's just a matter of structuring that into the run and where it best fits. So yeah, so there is limited flexibility, as I said. It's probably a little more than we expected or we would have liked. But again, we're accepting of that. They certainly have a role in collections in the future. I've got absolutely no doubt about that. 5 months into having ours, that future's probably a little further away than I initially thought it would be. It will all come down to the capacity of the batteries and getting greater capacity in the batteries without adding to the weight of the vehicle, because for us it's all about payload. The more we can put in the back, the less time we have to go back to the dump. So it's about getting that the weight down on them and the battery capacity up. There are a lot of complexities and capabilities associated with the vehicles, and again, as I say, they're a cookie cutter approach. We've probably had 20 councils and collection agencies and so forth have contacted us since February and said, you know, how does it work? Can we get one? What do you think? And my answer is understand what it can do for you. So talk to the manufacturers, talk to them, because how we use it, principally around Prospect Walkerville with our collections, will be very different to a Sydney-based approach or Bundaberg or wherever it may be. So it has its limitations. It's not a diesel. It doesn't do all those wonderful things that we've come to expect with a diesel and the reliability and so forth. And a lot of people are thinking that. A lot of people think that we can have this with all the reliability of a diesel and so forth, and it's simply not that simplistic. So it will get there, I've got no doubt about that, but whether that's 5 years or 20 years, I'm not sold on at this point in time. So yeah, look, it's been really interesting. There is a short Facebook clip there which you've got that link now, so you can send that around. It was a Channel 9 interview that we did, and so it has got some, you can get a little bit of a sense of the noise or the lack of noise that it makes. It still makes a noise because there's the electric motors on the hydraulics and so forth, so it is not a completely silent vehicle. You'd still have to be pretty deaf to get run over by one, but touch wood, we won't do that. Yeah, without speakers tonight, it's probably pretty pointless playing it. But yeah, look, it's been exciting for us. It's not on the road at the moment, so don't ask where you can see it tomorrow, because we've got a few issues with it at the moment, and as we can't get the Sea Electric guys over from Victoria to investigate it. So again, the joys of it. That is me done. I'm more than happy to take any and all the questions.
Where was the vehicle actually made, and are there any more being used anywhere else?
Yeah, so it was made in Bundaberg. Superior Pack are based in Bundaberg and used Sea Electric transmissions and so forth, which are a Melbourne-based company. So those two work together. We bought the Acco Glider, so it came to Superior Pack without an engine and so forth, so it was shipped out to Australia as a glider, and then they did all the fit out and so forth. And there's, I'll stand corrected, but I think there's 4 others that are running around in Australia. So there's 2 in Melbourne. One of them is due to come over here to start operating in Port Adelaide with Cleanaway. So I've heard, and then there's 2 in Perth. I think Cleanaway have got one and Suez have got one in Perth. So yeah, there's only 4 or 5 in total in Australia at the moment, and then yeah, there's 2 or 3 in New Zealand that I'm aware of.
I think there's some room for some behavioural changes here. I know a lot of people put a bin out that's not full,
So if people can be encouraged to put their bins out only when they're full. I bin cluster where I live, so the truck only has to stop at one point rather than 2 stops. More of an issue with diesel, but even so, if there's less pickups, then to make the schedules, the drivers can drive it a little more slowly, extend the battery range, less pickups, slower driving, bin clustering. How would that factor into things?
Oh, absolutely. It would help if people only put out full bins and so forth. Absolutely, but the short answer is it won't happen because yeah, we yeah. There's a whole nother presentation on people's behavioural attitudes with waste. So yeah, I can come back each week for the rest of the year if you want me to. But absolutely, those things like that would happen. Yeah, there's an enormous amount that could happen in the waste space. But the reality is, people are entitled to and were employed to pick up every bin that's presented. People are entitled to put out 2 bins every week, and whether it's completely full or whether it's got 1 bag of rubbish and a Coke can in the bottom, we're still entitled to or required to pick it up.
Well, just adding to that, maybe 12 free pickups a year. After that, you pay for them, and they're just going to council.
There we go. There's the absolute debate, and that's what it is. There's a huge debate I could go into around the value of waste or lack of value of waste that people have or society has. Because it's not valued, it's hidden within your rates, so people don't actually appreciate waste-related costs. The government can put up the waste levy and so forth, and the average punter in the room won't appreciate that, won't understand it because it's absorbed and it's hidden within your rates and so forth. So a whole host of things, but at the end of the day, you put bins out, we're required to pick them up. So if we could start with people not putting them behind cars and right next to letterboxes, that'd be a great start.
You mentioned the glider. Does it mean the basic truck? Yeah,
so the truck comes without an engine and everything, so it's literally just a chassis without any of the mechanics and so forth in it. So Superior Pack can either you can either purchase a glider and then they'll fit it out, or you can purchase a full diesel motor and they'll rip all that out and then put all the electrics in it. They can do both. Don't quote me, but I think from memory it was about a $15,000 saving through buying a glider versus buying the full diesel and then doing a retrofit.
So your glider, where was that made? Overseas?
Yeah, they're overseas. So they come out of England. I think these ones do, and as do all our diesels, and then Superior Pack simply fit the bodies onto them.
I think if after you expired it in 7 years, it would make a good motorhome, wouldn't it?
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
Tip people out the back. Yeah. Don't get ideas.
Just on your, I think because it's a truck, there's one advantage that I can see there. As battery technology improves, which it is all the time, there's so much. It will be much easier to retrofit different batteries than it is to our cars, which have to fit into our space. So you've got that, and also if it gets to that stage, I can't see why they can't fully electrify it, get rid of the hydraulics at all. You know, have electromechanical.
Yeah, and I think there's huge opportunities, and I'm the first to put my hand up and say that there's a lot that I don't understand about the electrics, and there'll be most people in this room that are far more knowledgeable around it than I. But yeah, absolutely. That was one of the attractions. It was a bit like the noise when we were looking at the business case. I fully expect that in 3, 5, 6 years' time, we'll pull those batteries out, put in new, hopefully, batteries that got twice the capacity into that truck, and suddenly, we've got a brand new truck in terms of what that offers to our fleet. those batteries we pull out, may end up being batteries that are taking the energy from the solar panels up the top. End up on a farm opening and closing a gate. There's a whole host of different sort of opportunities. We chose not to look at that within the business case because it becomes too complex and ultimately we end up not doing a like-for-like approach. But yeah, we expect that we'll refit this truck probably half a dozen times over the first 10 years of its life, assuming it lasts that long.
Do you have the voltage, the pack voltage that you're running on that DC side?
No.
Okay, cool.
So if there's any questions, that's what I will say. If there are any questions, if you want to collate them and send them to me. Bruce has got my details, and I should have acknowledged Bruce at the start. He was fantastic in terms of communicating with me and all the issues around COVID and we're on and we're not on, we're Zooming and we're not Zooming and so forth. So thank you very much, Bruce, was exceptional.
What voltage is the batteries that you're running?
That's what
No, I don't know, but I will now, I'll find that out. So yes.
Just letting you know, if it happens to get to 7 years and you need to sell it for 20 grand, make sure you let this place know.
I want more than 20 grand for this one. Yeah.
I'll give you 21.
Yeah.
There will be a bidding war.
And you can have the waste bit on the back.
Yeah.
Keep that.
You should know that AEVA nationally took on all the failed Bryson bus batteries that all gone to home storage centres around the country.
Yeah.
They're all sold off to AEVA members and repurposed. My comment is about driver behaviour. Those of us that have been driving, especially early generation electric cars with limited kilometres, have pretty much learned to sail the car, suitable to road conditions, watch out for headwinds and all the things you're talking about. A group of us a few years ago actually took a bunch of cars to Tasmania and back, which took days charging at caravan parks because no fast charging.
Yeah.
One of the suggestions I would make for drivers, if you want them to get on board, is run a competition. It's a really competitive.
Yeah.
Like, in the olden days when I grew up, my dad and his mates would be, how many miles to the gallon did you get? It's how many kilometres and how many bins
Yeah.
did you get? And teach them about driving, or what we call hypermiling, but driving electric vehicles to best advantage.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a bit of fun, but it could actually get them.
Well, there is a bit of that. My operations manager, who's been fantastic through this process, he proudly tells all the drivers that he still holds the records because we collect daily data, which we hold pretty close for obvious reasons. But yeah, we know each day how much we've used on the open road, how much we've used collecting bins, how many bins we've collected, the weight, and so forth. So yeah, so we've got all that. So but yeah, we do have that competition with largely a male-driven workforce. It's not too hard to create that competition. But yeah, look, there's a lot of value. I mean, the guys will talk about at traffic lights and so forth. At the morning, they can beat everyone off the line at the traffic light. Coming back in the afternoon, it's a bit of a challenge with 9 tonnes of material on it. It's not the same. So, and again, that's that just understanding around how to drive it and maximise it.
The thing that I'm curious about is probably not going to be on your list, but the hydraulics and everything that operates the arm and the lifting and the compress, I suppose it's got a compactor in there as well?
Yeah, that's it.
So when you compact, obviously there'd be some spring back and therefore hydraulic pressure would be wasted. And when the arm lowers, the arm weighs something. When that lowers, does it spin the hydraulic pump in reverse and regenerate electricity as well from that? Does it capture energy from more than just the slowing down of the vehicle? Because
fairly
yeah. That weighs 200 kilos and then put it down 4,000 times. There's energy being expended in slowing it down rather than actually generating power to slow it down. Yeah,
I'm fairly confident no is the answer. And interestingly, the compactor paddle speed is the one thing that we've slowed right down in this because that was taking a huge amount of energy. So it's literally a paddle that goes back and forth. In the diesel trucks, again, doesn't matter. They can go all day and it literally does, but it does about 4 to 5 revolutions between bins. In this truck, we've slowed it to 1. It does a single compaction with each. And it's fine. That works for us. But again, that was something that we learnt. We, I think we saved about 8% by pulling that down.
You could, if it's possible with the programming of that compactor as well, is only ever run the compactor during slowing down manoeuvres, because then your
Correct.
regen will work heaps better, because the battery can't take all the regen, but the compactor can suck it up.
Yeah. And that's what we've got data loggers and so forth on it at the moment, because again, we're trying to push more and more out of it and pushing that straight back to C electric to go, what are we doing wrong, or where can we get more out of it? So yeah. No more questions. Thank you very much. It's it was great to come along. And so I'm more than happy if I'll find out about the voltage and so forth. But if there's any others, by all means, get Bruce to flick me an email and I'll do a collective of understanding and getting those answers back to you. Thanks, guys.